Hey guys, Enigmatic Mr. L here to give my hot take for every main series Fire Emblem game. So I am trying to aim for hot takes, but because of the nature of how to do these videos, I don't do skips, no matter how awkward it may be. Some are going to be more so like a split opinion. Like for example, if you said like Dimitri good, Edelgard bad, or Edelgard good, Dimitri bad, there's a lot of people who agree and disagree with like both of those statements. It's more like a split, almost like 50-50. That's not really a hot take. Aim for something like 90% would say one thing. I'm going to say something else, but some are probably going to be closer to that. Some of my choices are just going to be more downplay. Like, hey, a lot of people really like this. I do like it, but not nearly as much. Or inverted, a lot of people hate this. I don't think it's that bad. Some even might be like outright cold takes. Like, like some of these might think like, yeah, most people I've seen say that. But, I did what I could. It was kind of difficult for some of these games where I didn't really have a hot take immediately come to mind, but I did try my best to come up with something for every main series game. So with that out of the way, let's get on with the list. Starting with Shadow Dragon: The Blade of Light. As the first game in the series, I think many would agree it's just kind of clunky, janky. It's just kind of hard to navigate the user interface, but I do agree it does have a certain charm. Where I do disagree with a lot of people though is the music. A lot of people really like that, but I think the music's bad. Like I played through this game. I just had to turn the music off and just kind of listen to a podcast instead because it was giving me a headache. Maybe that's just me. I don't think I had the same problem with Gaiden, although maybe I had a mute. It's been a while since I played the one playthrough of Gaiden. But yeah, not much to say about here. I just think if you're going to play this game, uh, if you have any taste like me, just play it on mute, listen to something in the background instead. Speaking of Gaiden, a lot of people in the fighting community kind of think this game's underrated and has its own charm, but I just think honestly, other than just checking off a box that you've played it, so you can complete every main series game, I don't think there's really much of a reason to play it for two big reasons. Well, one, it has a remake, and while that's true for the other games, Shadow Dragon Blade of Light and Mystery of the Emblem, both those games changed some things, which even if I would say the overall experience is better, there's still some reason to go back and play the originals. Like I said, Shadow Dragon Blade of Light has its own charm to it. The remake Shadow Dragon, while it has a lot more cleaner user interface, but adding some things in weapon triangle, which wasn't originally in mind in the game, throws off the balance a lot. Stat caps in Shadow Dragon Blade of Light besides HP are 20, and they changed that in the remake. Added in open and reclassing, so there are some reasons to go back and play the original. Plus, if you're going back to the original, you want to play the very first game series, see the game's roots. Marth is a very iconic character. The same cannot be said for Alm and Celica. Mystery of the Emblem had the mounting and dismounting mechanic. So there are certain maps New Mystery of the Emblem, like that map where you have Ares and his duel. There's a river, which originally you had to dismount so you couldn't just cross it. In the remake, you could just fly over there, and there's few things they changed, kind of get around that. But I think both those games, the originals, even if they're not as good, there's a reason to play them. Gaiden pretty much is just a strictly worse version than Echo Shadows of Valentia. There's two things I think Gaiden has slight edge on it. One is that for most of the time, the story changes and add-ons they had in New Mystery of the Emblem were better. There are a few times the add-ons kind of I just don't like certain things. But 9 times out of 10, I think the remake is better in story and character development. Also, Gaiden has a lot of overpowered, broken tools at your disposal. The remake toned them down a bit, but as fun as they are, I think I'd rather play Echoes anyway, just kind of more balanced game. Just Echoes of Shadows of Valentia. It keeps everything in the original, even the jank, the terrible map design, the terrible hit rates, the annoying canters, being locked at one inventory slot, while at the same time really polishing up with a beautiful art style, full on voice acting. Dungeon exploration is a lot more in depth, just kind of between chapters, visiting villages, kind of like a visual novel. It's a lot more charming, and they added in some things supports and foraging, which don't completely alter the game 100%. I would still say it's overall pretty faithful, but it does improve upon it. There's also just the fact that even if the remake didn't exist, just like I said, all the reasons I just mentioned, terrible hit rates, terrible map design, it's I did have fun with it, as I do with all Fire Emblem games, but this is a game that definitely came the closest to me just not having fun. Conversely, for when it comes to Mystery of the Emblem, I would say don't overlook book one. A lot of people talk about Mystery of the Emblem. They only talk about book two, which makes sense. Like originally, book one was just kind of a partial remake of Shadow Dragon Blade of Light, even like cut some chapters so they could fit it onto the Super Nintendo. But while I do think this is kind of an awkward position, if you want charm, just play the original. If you want like polish, play the DS remake. I do think this has its own certain appeal as well. Like mounting, dismounting is like a unique way to kind of balance out your cavalry units, like force them to dismount on indoor units but they face a stat penalty. Gives them like sometimes reasons to use like units like Navarre and Ogma, they'll outshine like Cain Abel, but then other times in outdoor maps like Cain Abel outshine like them. I think overall it's worth playing. I had a lot of fun with it. That might just be because I Iron Manned it, had like unique experiences with it, but I do understand a lot of people just playing it. It's because even though this game has been remaked as well, people just kind of play book two. But I do think if you go out of way to play Mystery of the Emblem, you shouldn't overlook book one. Play it at least like for a bit. For Genealogy of the Holy War, many people fall into the camp of like, the gameplay isn't that great, but at least the story's good. And I honestly can't feel like the opposite. Well, one in general, just Fire Emblem games, I'm not like the biggest prone of story. Like I'll read through it once, maybe like the second time, pick up on things I didn't do the first time. Beyond that, I just kind of like skip all the dialogue, fast forward through everything. But well, I do think Genealogy of the Holy War has a better story than most Fire Emblem games. That really honestly isn't saying much. Can't really talk about the story like going into spoilers. So here's your warning for like a 30-something-year-old game, around 30 years. So first starting out, there's so much like exposition and stuff about stories, events, locations, like off screen. It's a lot to keep up with, especially like on a first time playthrough. Even just beyond that, like Sigurd's romance with Deirdre doesn't really feel believable. It's like he just met her, instantly falls in love, nothing really time to kind of establish it. So it's supposed to be like a major motivation for like Sigurd's actions, like can play a major role in the story. It just kind of feels rushed, underdeveloped. You get to the big climactic battle in chapter 5. It's like, oh no, all of Sigurd's army has been like killed off. And then you find out, well, Lewin survived. And they're like, okay, one, that makes sense. It's like, it's heavily implied, not outright stated. He's actually like Forseti taking over Lewin's body. So it's okay. Just one, but that one doesn't even count. You play a Thracia 776, you get the true ending. It's like, oh, Bridget actually survived. So it's like, okay, that's one character. And then you read like the support, or not really support, it's like talk conversations with the children. It's like, my mother survived, trying to find her and father. It's just like, left wondering, okay, apart from Sigurd and like Quan and Ethelyn, did anyone actually die, or a lot of them just like whereabouts unknown? Kind of takes away the drama there. I was also just the fact you get into like the second generation. While the first one did have some interest in like how Sigurd's action inadvertently led to the creation of the Empire, the second generation is pretty much your straightforward Fire Emblem game. Like, hey, defeat the evil Empire, slay a dragon. Some have said that this is like you get to see like consequences of like the first generation, but I mean, it doesn't change the fact the story's just very straightforward. Like if they made something like a prequel to Shadow Dragon, dealing with like Cornelius, Marth's father, even if it had like good story, it wouldn't change the fact that Shadow Dragon's still a very basic story. They try to pay like sympathy, like a lot of these people is just war is all they know. They're just trying to survive. Like what's good, what's evil in like side of war. But then apart from like Arvis and maybe like Ishtar or so, pretty much every villain, every boss is just like comically evil, mustache twirling villain. Kind of undermines a lot of that. So yeah, there's that. When it comes to gameplay, I do think it's something you kind of have to get used to. Like, it's the only game without free trading, which I get can be frustrating, but I do think the game is designed around it. Like, they just had open free trading. It's like, what's the point of, like, marrying so you can just marry your units, they can give money to each other? What's the point of, like, thief utility? Why not at the start of the arena just, trade around a weapon with, like, 50 kills on it, like, a high amount of crit, trade around all the rings, everyone just clears the arena, like, no thought required. There's also just speaking of the like the arena itself. A lot of people find that tedious, and that's fair to me. I just like seeing those stats go up, seeing like how far it can take each unit. Is it worth spend a lot of money to buy them temporarily, buy like a stat boosting ring or a better weapon to clear it? Which units I just completely give up on? Which units was okay? This one has a small chance of beating this fight. I'm gonna keep resetting, keep manipulating RNG till I win it. I enjoyed that, and just like the second generation, like crafting your units. Like I do think every parent has like the optimal best pairing, but I think every parent has at least like two or three pairings. Like even if these second or third pairings, they're not as good as the first, they do offer some sort of advantage. They're fun. So yeah, overall, I go back, I play it, I enjoy it, but I always just fast forward through all the cutscenes. For Thracia 776, I would say that just playing maps straight out, going for full recruitment, as frustrating as it can be, I think it's doing it at least once. Maybe not on your first playthrough, or maybe doing first playthrough, it's probably not worth doing again. You're probably just like better off warp skipping like certain chapters, like chapter 11X, chapter 12, just skipping Ethlyn's recruitment. Just on Xavier's map, warp boss killer, warp leaf, kill boss, seize with leaf, just ignore Xavier entirely. But as frustrating as they do create something of an experience, like something memorable. Like there's something to say of like having good and bad, it creates something memorable as opposed to like lacking in either. It's just completely forgettable. Like I'm definitely never playing chapters like 11 or 12 and 12X straight out again. I'm just like warp skipping them. But I'm glad I played through them out straight once, as like annoying as it was. It was kind of fun in a way. I'm pretty much never going to recruit Ethlyn again, but I'm glad I did the story chapter like at least once. Got like the integration, got to see the true ending. Again, like if you end up like replaying a lot of these games beyond once, like just let Xavier die. You don't really need to get your perfect ending, but I do recommend to give it a shot at least at some point. For Binding Blade, a lot of people, myself included, poke fun of Roy just being like a terrible unit, but I do think to an extent it offers something like fun and unique. I definitely wouldn't want this for like every farm game. Maybe not even like I'd be fine if they didn't use it again. Most of the time, your lords now they're at least good units, if not like the best in your army. But you look at games like that I enjoy, like Genealogy of the Holy War or Awakening of Three Houses, and I do enjoy these games. It's like okay, just have Sigurd and Seliph pretty much almost solo their respective generations. Crom and Robin solo the game with like a Crom backpack, just Nosferatu tank. Whichever house leader is in Three Houses, just going to be like completely dominated, especially like Edelgard. Reclass to Wyvern Lord. Just use Raging Storms. Boom, one clear chair maps. That can take away a lot from like the strategy and like this strategy game. As Fire Emblem has often been compared to like a very elaborate game of chess, I think it's fitting to have a lord that is like the king. Like he really can't do much on his own, but you have to like protect him. That's kind of part of the experience. And there's some interesting like gameplay story integration you get to see or you don't see much otherwise. Like, yeah, Roy's just like a 15-year-old kid. He's thrust in this war when he should like be studying. Like his supports with like I think it's like Wolf or so like show like, are you okay? Or, you really shouldn't be on the front lines. Like, no, I have to inspire the army. So like the game does kind of acknowledge this. Roy really isn't built for fighting, and I do kind of enjoy like poking fun at Roy. But well, one, I don't think he's as bad as many people say. Like he has some early game contributions. Like mid game, he doesn't do much of anything. But and well, two, like I said, it is offering something like unique. Just having like a lord that you actively have to protect. I think that's fun. I didn't like it at first, but I got used to it the more I played Binding Blade. For Blazing Blade, I honestly don't know if this is that hot of a take, but I'm more of like an Eliwood Lyn shipper rather than like Eliwood Ninian. I think like Ninian is the like semi-canon like pairing. Like it explains Ninian won't have much longer to live. She stays in the world, which explains why Roy's mother is never seen. But I do kind of like the theory, or like going with headcanon that Eliwood married Lyn. Like Lyn passed on. That's why it's playing like a somewhat important role in the game. She's not seen in Binding Blade. And Ninian went back to the Dragon Gate. As many people got into Fire Emblem initially through like Smash Bros. Seeing like Roy's playable unit, then seeing like Lyn as an assist trophy, I thought it was a good interesting headcanon that Lyn was actually his mother. Another explanation of why Roy's like so terrible. I have like a mediocre father Roy and like a terrible unit Lyn. Of course, Roy's going to be bad. I do like kind of like their chemistry. My first playthrough, just Ellie with normal, I ended up pairing these two off, and yeah, I like it. Sacred Stones is the only one I'm really getting into like gameplay mechanics because I really couldn't think of anything else. But I think most people for like the promotion for Pegasus Knight, they like Wyvern Knight. This does grant like I think it's like a little bit more Falcon Knight grants a little bit more HP, defense, and res. Wyvern Lord acts, provides a bit more constitution. But the big draw here is that Wyvern Knight grants the Pierce skill, which has like 11% chance to completely negate the enemy's defense. Whereas like Falcon Knight gives you a sword. I Most people go for Wyvern Knight, just go for like Pierce skills, even if it's unreliable, it can be very good when it does activate. I do think that has something to do with like not just looking at these like classes in a vacuum, but in the context of what they are in the game. So Chapter 9 in Erica's route, like that's right after you get your first like Elysian whip. I think you're in like chapter 8. It's filled with axe enemies. Ross, if you trained him, get like to like pirate, he can help like fight them. But especially if you have like Simon, if you're prone to Falconite, being able to wield swords is really good against them. You can do the same thing with lances, but you're gonna have a much easier matchup. Yeah, Wyvern Knight is fine, but generally, I like going Falcon Knight, even if you're going like Ephraim's route, where that really isn't like as big of an issue. Like some people say, well, if you just go Wyvern Knight, you don't get swords. If you need to use it, just use an Axe Reaver. But there's only so many Axe Reavers to go around. They're more expensive. And even sometimes you can just do things with like a cheap iron sword that isn't really possible if you didn't have access to it. For Path of Radiance, I'm a little hesitant to talk about this one. It might stir up some like controversy in the comments, so please just be civil, whatever like you say. But I just explicitly don't see Ike as straight or gay. And yes, I will preface this by saying like it's definitely possible there have been like fictional characters where the author intended them to be like gay, and I just didn't like pick up on it. Same thing in like real life. I'd see people as friends in terms of oh they're more than friends. I just don't pick up on it. But I also think most people would agree on me. There's definitely times where the author didn't intend homosexuality, but like that's how audiences like interpret it. Or like real life, people see good friends as like something more. I don't like for Valencia. A lot of people like end up shipping these two, which I just don't see like any chemistry or anything. I've been told it's played up more in the North American English version than Japan, but if it's played up more, I can't even begin to imagine what the Japanese version was. I'd say it's like, yeah, um, Valencia hires Ike as a mercenary, but I don't see their interactions anything different than like Marth and Ninia and Arcanea, or like Roy and I forget her name is Zephiel's sister in like Binding Blade. It's like, yeah, he's helping him. Maybe they'll have good relations, but I just don't see any romance. Soren and Ike, or I guess some people say like Ranulph and Ike. I can definitely see the case of like Soren being into Ike. You know how like obsessed he is with him, but a man being interested in another man doesn't mean that that subject is necessarily gay. Otherwise, there'd be no such thing as lesbians, because like women, even like lesbians, they get hit by men all the time. And could he be gay? Could he be straight? I don't know. I don't really see him as asexual either. I just see him as like a good, solid character. I think like regardless of his sexuality, how you interpret it, Ike is a very interesting, well written character. Next to Dimitri, he's my favorite Lord in the series. Two things I want to touch up briefly on people who say that he has to be straight. Some people point to a Priam, Ike's descendant in Awakening. The two problems I see with this is like one, he could be a descendant of like Mist, maybe like Mist and Void. They have descended. You might think that's just like a stretch, grasping at straws, but there is precedent for this. Marth is called like a descendant of Anri, but then like the hero Anri never had any children. Marth is actually a descendant of his brother, so they could be doing that. But I think it's just more likely uh, the the people who made like the spot pass characters, they weren't really thinking about the implications. They just want like an Easter egg to like the Tellius games. I personally just kind of trip like all the spot pass characters as non-canon. Like all the characters, like Emran actually died when she fell off. Walhart, Aversa, they died as well. It's just kind of like hypothetical what if. Of course, that's open to interpretation. On the other end of the spectrum, I've heard some people say that because of this game was like released in like early, like mid 2000s, it's like they couldn't really be very explicit if they wanted to have like a gay pairing. But I will point out that like Radiant Dawn, which as a whole, this kind of applies to like Radiant Dawn 2, but I have a different pick for my hot take there. Radiant Dawn gave us Heather, which TV tropes like very generously list as ambiguously gay, but if Heather is ambiguously gay, then I'm ambiguously like a Fire Emblem fan. Like if they didn't have a problem Radiant Dawn doing that, some a character that's so openly like flirts with women, if they wanted to make Ike like explicitly gay, they probably could have done that too. Doesn't disrule it. They could have just been more subtle because he's the main character, but either way, I just like Ike as a character regardless. So for Radiant Dawn, I think that compared to other Fire Emblem games, it's actually like fairly bad. Now, granted, being the worst among Fire Emblem games is like having like a Ruby, a Sapphire, an Emerald, Gold Bar, Diamond, and depending on like size and like purity, one's going to be less valuable than the others, but it's still like a priceless gem. So I did have fun with Radiant Dawn, but I've seen a lot of people praise this game, and I think it has some like major problems. There's story and characters, which I don't really care too much about, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about them at least a little bit. I think like the Blood Pact is kind of like textbook definition of like plot contrivance. And even though it is kind of interesting seeing these armies like fight together in this like epic war, in the end it all just devolves into like, okay, now it's just band together to like slay God. It's like kind of just like story falls off a cliff towards the end. Character development, Path of Radiance got like so right with like base conversations and supports, and then just Radiant Dawn. The lack of supports really hurts like a lot of the cast, especially the newcomers. Like after the Dawn Brigade members join, the few dialogues, like maybe one or two base conversations, they feel very flat, underdeveloped. It also hurts like the Grail Mercenaries too. Like some people point out, if you just got like a plot summary of Path of Radiance, just jumped right into Radiant Dawn, there actually isn't much about Ike to make him that all interesting or like distinguished from the other lords. Which you could say, well, it's like a sequel. You got all the story, backstory, Path of Radiance, just continuing Radiant Dawn. But I guess that's fair. But I still would like to see like more character interactions. But of course, that's just story and character. That's just like the icing on the cake. The big like meat and bones, like meat and potatoes, is the gameplay. And I'm just going through it by bit by bit. Radiant Dawn or the Dawn Brigade chapters, everyone knows. So you're like surrounded by like terrible units. Meg and Fiona are just jokes. Micaiah, if someone flicks on her, she dies. You got Archer Boy. You got Voluk, who you either have to like constantly feed him Olivia Grass or like take the Wild Heart skill off of, like deal with the Wild Heart skin with lowered stat. You can't even take that off in part one. Jill requires so much effort to like get going, it borderlines on favoritism. Soth would hold up pretty well, were not for his lower stat caps as like a thief. Edward is very reliant on his first few level ups. Nolan, because of his higher base level, doesn't gain any XP well. I've never seen a good Nolan. They've either been strength screwed, speed screwed, or both. So you're surrounded by bad units, which really hurt your enjoyment of the game. You get to that one swap map, and then it's like, oh, Jill isn't available for whatever reason. You know, she would have been great on this map. Terranio joins. Think, oh, finally get a good unit. A little slow, low movement, but that's okay. And he's around for like both parts of like part 6, and then just kind of buggers off to like part 3. Not even like reason to fight chapter, but he buggers off for like a long time. You get to the Fog of War chapter with like the Black Knight Micaiah. It's really just, did you solve the puzzle? Did you like, okay, then you win. Otherwise, you lose. Not really that interesting. Part 2 maps, like Valencia just tickles enemy with a slim sword till Har chums up, kills everyone, and then just kind of wait out like turn 7 and 8 or whatever it is. The map with like Braum and Nefni, you're facing shaky hit rates. The next map is like, I think it's like Joffrey's Charge. You're trying to keep the enemy units alive for bonus XP, but that's much easier said than done. Pretty tedious. Fog of War chapter is always annoying. A lot of people plays Alencia's Gambit as a fun map, but even on my first playthrough, it was just like, okay, move far forward, dance, kill like the boss. Okay, that's it. Completed about like 2 turns or so. Didn't find it that interesting. Finally, the Grail Mercenaries join. They're back-to-back Fog of War maps, so they're automatically bad. Then once Hard joins the Grail Mercenaries, he pretty much trivializes the map, just like have him fly around, kill everything. You finally go back to the Dawn Brigade and experience some truly awful maps, like Reason to Fight, like the Boulder map. Your units have been like completely out-leveled by the enemies you're fighting. Then in part 4, the enemy reinforcements don't stop coming, and they don't stop coming, and they don't stop coming. It's not so much like difficult so much as it is annoying. Then when you get to like Tower, it's like, okay, you have 5 Laguz Royals. They're going to like pretty much guarantee a slot that 10 units to take in unless you're intentionally handicapping yourself. Plus, like, I guess Har. And you have so many like filler units like Oliver, Stefan, Volk, Bastion, Rennie, that was just kind of like, what was the point of training up anyone besides like Har, like Ike and Jill and lower difficulties? I feel like it almost be playing on 0% growth and not much would change. You do the maps, and it's like, oh, finally, Ike's epic duel with the Black Knight. And even me in my first playthrough, not knowing that the Black Knight is weak to the hammer, sent Ike up, hit him once, then the next turn, like Knight came, hit Ike, and that was it. Like the map was over in like 1 or 2 turns. I didn't have to do anything in the bottom half. Degencia, a lot of people say it's really tough. Even on my first playthrough, it was okay, just move some moves up, quad dance, maybe like a rescue, and it's okay, boom, defeat him in 1 turn. And then the final boss is sure just fairly annoying. So yeah, I don't like Radiant Dawn as much as like most other Fire Emblem games, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. For Shadow Dragon, this is one of those kind of downplayed hot takes where like, yeah, it's bad, but not as bad. Are the Gaiden champ characters is kind of bad, like awkward. You can't really recruit everyone unless you intentionally like kill off your units. So there's no way to have everyone alive and recruit everyone. You can't do it, which is kind of like different than how many people play. And hard five, it just kind of feels unplay tested. Like chapters 2 and 3, the most optimal strat, like the safest strategy is gradually break the boss's weapons. It's been like, God knows how many turns. But this game could have released with like less content. Maybe like the highest difficulty being hard 3 and no Gaiden chapter requirements. It would have had less content, but those problems would technically be solved. It is true that just because something's optional doesn't mean it's like immune to criticism, but I still think it's worth pointing out. I think the bigger problems of the game as a whole is just like its blandness, the art style, the lack of supports, the story being a rehash of the very first one just feels very bland. Kind of like the Radiant Dawn, I did enjoy it, but not nearly as much compared to other Fire Emblem games. And then we have New Mystery of the Emblem. Again, another kind of downplayed hot take, where I would say Chris is not that bad. To those who have watched some of my previous videos, you might be confused because in my video worst thing about every Fire Emblem game for New Mystery of the Emblem, I said Chris. For my most hated unit in each game, I again said Chris for New Mystery of the Emblem. But that was just because I had to pick something. New Mystery of the Emblem is a game, I think the lows aren't very low, but the highs aren't very high either. So I was like, I just had to go with Chris. And same thing with like worst character. I don't really think of Chris right away. I think of like characters I dislike, but I was just like, well, no one in the other list generates any feeling of negativity. So I guess they're my least favorite character in that game by default. Obviously, you can't say like Chris is like a textbook Mary Sue. They're entered into a world which originally they had like no part of. But I think like some of the ideas were executed well. It's mostly about Marth's story with kind of Chris's being like a side story in the paralogs. The main focus kind of, or at least should have been on Marth with a little bit of work it could have. I think that works. I think the main problem is just as Chris is just the avatar worship. Just every support conversations, every interaction, like, wow, Chris, you're great. Wow, Chris, you're so amazing. Wow, Chris, God, we have you. Like, if they just tone that down a bit, like just have it be Marth's story. Chris just kind of joins as like a fighter joins Marth's army. I think that's almost the right way to have like an avatar unit. For Fire Emblem Awakening, a lot of like more uh veteran players, more like elitists, don't like this game, at least not compared to like other Fire Emblem games, for very valid reasons. But this was my first Fire Emblem game, and it might just be nostalgia. That's probably a factor, but this is actually my favorite entry in the series. Now, I'm not blind to this game's faults. The map design is very bland, just an empty field, a bunch of enemies. A lot of mechanics are overpowered. Just Crom Robin solo, Robin just in general overpowered, pair up mechanic, Nosferatu tanking, Gale Force. Difficulty is very rigid. Normal is far too easy. Hard, apart from Amber Spawn, still fairly easy. Lunatic Plus is just go screw yourself. The characters are kind of like anime tropey. The story's just kind of whatever. But I just like, I returned playing. I thought I wouldn't like it after playing a lot of the older Fire Emblem games, but I still really enjoyed my time with it. I love the supports. I love just kind of crafting my like one man army builds. Have a lot of fun with it. Fire Emblem in general is just a game like I've played every main series games, excluding the first three, which have had remakes. I played them all at least twice. I've experienced every route split and the like. Played most of them on higher difficulties. Bought every like version of paid DLC. It's my absolute favorite franchise. But I started with Awakening, so I'll always be an Awakening baby. Next, we have Fire Emblem Fates, which I'm going to say Birthright is my favorite route. Kind of controversial. A lot of people don't like Rev for various obvious reasons, like the maps are very gimmicky. I don't think they're as bad as much some people say, but yeah, I do kind of agree. Like they're subpar. Conquest, I would agree, has better map design overall, tighter map design. But there's two reasons why I prefer Birthright overall as my favorite route. One is, well, again, Conquest map design is better overall. There are way more frustrating maps in Conquest than there are in Birthright, like Ninja Hell, Fox Hell, Fuga's Wild Ride, Chapter 26 with Algo with his staves, like the final boss. Like, if you're not prepared for that, like first time, or like playing Lunatic, they can like tempt you to throw your 3DS at the wall. And Birthright doesn't have anything nearly to that extent. Like, you might be like, wow, this Camilla chapter is tough. Yeah, I'm just going to do Ryoma solo and just kind of move on. The second thing is, Well, I have said I don't care about story too much. Conquest story is just so bad in my opinion that like it does affect me to like an extent. Like Birthright story is nothing to write home about, but I think like in terms of like a plot summary of what happens, it's okay. It's mostly just like the writing is bad. Conquest, I just get so frustrating dealing with like working with Garen. Like he's not a great villain like on Birthright, just kind of cookie cutter generic villain, forgettable. But like as Conquest advertises the route, like you fix the corrupted kingdom from within, but then you basically just blindly follow Garen's orders to the last two chapters. It feels like you're playing as a villain in a game like they're not intended to. Like the story didn't intend for you to play as the villain, but I kind of feel like I am. It's just kind of awkward. Um, yeah, you could make the argument that Conquest story is like funny bad, whereas Birthright story is just kind of boring bad. That's fair, but to me, I just found the between like Conquest stories being like so frustrating and the difficulty like frustrating maps. I do think I like Birthright overall as my favorite route. For Fire and Echo Shadows of Valentia, I've heard some people say that like as bad as Gaiden's maps were, the worst map series have to go to Echoes because they just sat on those maps for like 20 years or however long it was, and they just did nothing with them in stead. But I don't think like the map should have been redesigned. You might think that's kind of controversial because I've repeatedly gone on record saying this has like Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, and Gaiden have like has terrible map design. But I do think if you're remaking the game, if you're completely like redesign the maps, like at that point, why are you making a remake? Why not just make like a new game? Like the purpose of a remake is, I'd rather they change too little than too much. They change too little, it's like, oh, it was a missed opportunity. This was annoying. The original game, they had an opportunity to fix it, they didn't. But they changed too much, and it's like, well, they ruined it. A lot of people who've never played the original, they're never gonna know how great this character was, this map was, this like mechanic was. I think it's much more frustrating when they change too much. Like as bad as say like Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, the water temple is its infamy. Ocarina of Time 3D, which granted that's like a remaster, not a full remake. It did some slight changes, like made the iron boots I think easier to equip. But if they just complete in a remake of Ocarina of Time, they just completely replace that dungeon with something else, that just feels like unfaithful. It's like you're not really playing the same game. It's like at the very least, I want the maps to be the same. Maybe not like the hit rates to be garbage, but I do want the maps to be like as they were in the original. Fire Emblem Three Houses, again, I have another like downplayed hot take. I would say that to an extent, Claude is actually uninteresting as a lord. A lot of people like Claude. I do too, to an extent, but in a game with very like morally gray characters, like Dimitri has some like very kind moments, very honorable, but he's also going to be like savage, obsessed with revenge. Edelgard like is an idealist or like vision for how things should be might be fair enough, but what she's willing to do in her conquest to get that is another thing. Rhea's technically like kept peace for like close to 1,000 years, but her policies are a little like cutthroat and she's kind of like held technology back. Now Claude on paper like has these things, like he cares about his friends, but he's also known as like a schemer. But like his scheming thing is just more of like informed attribute than something you see in the game. I think it would a lot more interesting if he was also like a flawed, morally gray character. And I could see the argument to be made of like, well, if you don't want to go with like the war crazy like Dimitri or like the Conqueror Edelgard or like the angry Rhea, you have like more laid back Claude, but you already have Byleth in this game because like the player avatar could just have the role of like the big good character, and whichever like route he like aligns with keeps that character in check. I have heard Three Hopes kind of changes to a bit, made Claude a bit more like morally gray, but they also made like Dimitri and Edelgard more like good. Claude, I think, has like Rodrigue with him to help keep him sane during like the time skip chapters. Edelgard cuts off her support with those who slid in the dark much sooner. It's really seemed like missed opportunity. Like Three Hopes should have had the morally gray claw, and then our Three Houses should have had the morally gray claw, and then Three Hopes the more like the more like down to earth like good Claude. Like even as someone like me, that's like typical like opinion many people have. Like I love Dimitri, I hate Edelgard. I played Blue Lions, then Golden Deer, then Crimson Flower. And it's like partially through my like Golden Deer route, I was just like, yeah, I can't wait to get Scarlet to like um Edelgard's route. It's like as much as I like hate Edelgard after playing like Blue Lions as my first route, I also just kind of like loved hating her. It's like I love Dimitri, I love hating Edelgard, and Claude was just like, nah, he's all right. I like him, I guess, but I feel like it was a missed opportunity. And last but not least, we have Engaged. Again, getting this was kind of a downplayed hot take. I don't think the story is that bad. Again, this is coming from someone who generally doesn't care about story in my Fire Emblem games, and it definitely has its problems. It's kind of unoriginal. It's like, oh, go collect, the 12 MacGuffins, save the world, slay a dragon. Yeah, that's fair. That's kind of par for the course. I think the bigger issue is just like the writing. But even just ignoring that, it's like the four hounds, you fight them, God knows how many times, they keep retreating. By the time they die, it doesn't feel satisfying. And then the last moments, after spending cartoonishly evil along, they like have this like try to be like feel sympathy in like the final moments as they die. Most of Sombron's motivations are kept secret until like literally the very end. Up until that point, he's just a generic doomsday, like cookie cutter evil dragon villain. But I do think it has some interesting elements. Um, Obviously, like the reveal that Alir is like the child of the Fell Dragon, anyone can see a mile coming, like a mile away. So some have pointed out, like, well, yeah, you have like Shakespeare tragedies like Macbeth and Hamlet. Everyone knows how they're going to end going into it, but if you look at it more like that, you're just not like looking for the reveal, like, oh, Lear's the child of the Fell Dragon. Who'd have thought? But you're more so anticipating how will the characters react to it. I think that improves it slightly. Also, the reveal, I can admit that Alir is only the adoptive child of Lumera. I didn't see that coming, even though there is foreshadowing. You kind of see like Lumira pray to summon Sigurd. She seems kind of concerned that Alir's like use an incantation to summon. So, it's not that great, but I do think it has its moments. And that is my list. As always, thank you so much for watching. Any hot Fire Emblem takes you have, please leave in the comments below. This is Enigmatic Mr. L, signing out.